Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, movie reviews, otherworldly, and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow Creepin' It Real Show on Twitter at creepin_it. You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. And you can also go to our website, creepinitshow.com. Welcome to Creepin' It Real. This is Yardley from the great state of Georgia. And I want to quickly introduce my host so we can give some shout outs and dive into talking about Nightmare on Elm Street. First, I want to go with Moni from the great state of California. How are you doing?
Good morning, everybody. I'm doing well. How are you guys over there in Georgia? What's the weather like? Is it actually feeling like winter? Because we sure haven't had that here yet.
Well, I mean, at least at night, it's been a little nippy. How have you been feeling about that, Christy?
I'm surviving it, I guess. I'm one of those people that if it's gonna be cold, just snow already. I'm not a real big fan of being really fucking cold and not having anything to show for it.
Oh my god!
Have you guys seen Star Wars?
Oh yeah.
I knew I was the first thing I was gonna ask you, Yardley, is how is Star Wars? Because I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, I'll just say go see it for yourself, and then after you see it, I'll tell you. Would you agree with that, Moni? It's just one of those, you've just got to see it.
Yeah, especially after the last one when there were so many spoilers going around, for sure. But I'm not a Star Wars person, and I enjoyed it, though, so I am going to say that.
It's going to be hard for you to stay spoiler-free, Christy, like on social media. But, yeah, I would say go ahead and knock that on out, and then after that, we'll talk about it.
I was supposed to go on Friday, but I ended up having to go, I had to find time, but to an ornament exchange party, so just had to do what I had to do, I guess.
'Tis the season for all those responsibilities.
Yeah, well, it's definitely interesting, but something that you mentioned to me in the pre-chat, Chrissy, is we definitely have to give a shout out to my friend Savalis with Super Dragon Graphics. He did our background and our avatar for the show. I thought that he did a great job of incorporating all of the different things that we talk about on the show. Yeah, so if anyone needs graphic designs, just check out our page. You see a little bit of his style, but he's on Instagram and Twitter at Super Dragon Graphics, all one word. Too easy.
He was great. Yeah, thank you so much.
For sure.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do based off of some of the conversation that we had last week, somehow Freddy Krueger entered into our conversation last week, so I decided to kind of pull the Nightmare on Elm Street out and take a look at it. It was definitely one of those things that growing up, especially in the 80s, some of the imagery in that movie are things that when you are a young child, a preteen, it can affect you pretty, pretty solidly. And one of the things that I noticed was how good this movie held up. And we'll probably definitely get a little bit deeper into some of the things that went into making the movie. But I really thought going in that I would think that it was silly, but hell no, that movie holds up. And I actually have to put the main heroine in the film, Nancy, I put her up there with Ripley in terms of her,
badassery.
Yeah, her badassery.
Yeah.
I mean, she was doing MacGyver and Wile E. Coyote shit to fuck up Freddy. So it was pretty awesome. We'll get into that. But Moni, did your memory change when you got a chance to watch the film again?
I made the mistake of watching it with my famously, notoriously naysaying husband. And so that kind of colored my perspective because I had started watching it while I was wrapping some gifts last night. And I was like, this holds up. This is still scary. And then he came upstairs and I was just trying to think of like a new angle to talk about today. And so I was just like, so what do you think? Does this hold up? Is this still scary? Because I know he used to think it was scary and he was like, nah. And so the whole time he's going through, he's like, see, this is why this doesn't work and this is why this doesn't work. So I do have some comments that I will have to respectfully disagree, that I kind of walk the line again between you guys thinking it completely holds up perhaps and my husband thinking it completely doesn't, and my own point of view, which is now so kind of colored by that somewhere in between. But for overall, the concept for sure and some other things that we'll get into, yeah, it's still scary, But I would look forward to hopefully a good remake, a well done remake, not the one that they did just a few years ago that was note for note pretty much the same film. Okay. There are concepts there that they could definitely take and update a little bit and make it scary as shit. But I said the same thing about the main character, though. That's funny that you would bring that up, Yardley, because I said that I was like, we think about Scream Queens and we laugh about how they made the wrong decision by running into the house or not trying to get help or making stupid decisions. But that girl, every chance she got to be a badass and try to fix this problem and try to get the adults to listen to her and, the Wile E. Coyote stuff. I was thinking of Home Alone.
Totally.
Set up to try to best Freddy Krueger. But yeah, she was a badass. I mean, for a teenage girl, and all those cops are just like not believing her and stuff. I mean, we'll get into all that, but I was like, this is really a little bit before its time, where the female is actually, none of the boys were coming to her rescue whatsoever, or even the adults. So yeah I totally agree there.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You know what, Christy, I actually have a question for you real quick.
Yeah.
Does this Nancy kind of remind you of the Stranger Things Nancy? Do you think that they took some elements from this character and applied it to Nancy in that show?
Yeah, definitely. I could see a little bit of a parallel with the two. I think the Stranger Things Nancy relies a little too much on her dudes to get stuff done. Nancy was kind of like, screw all you guys. I'm just going to, on Nightmare on Elm Street. Her dude was falling asleep and she, needed his help and he was kind of bumbling along and she's like, all right, I'm done here with you. You're like useless. Do my own shit. And then, but, you can really, there's a really good way of looking at these horror movies. And I think that most of the time, the classic horror movies have really, really strong female characters. And that's what I love about horror, because you do have the typical dumb, it's the stereotypical dumb, woman or the guy that's, is going to die, he's stupid, he's going to die first. But really, really good classics, there just seems to be this formula where the lead is usually a woman, and she's usually really strong. And that's probably one of the reasons, as a total feminist, why I love horror at times. And some of them I think, oh, this is stupid, because Moni's right. They make all the wrong decisions. They don't, and then you've got this one where she's literally kicking ass and taking names against her parents and the cops and the city and everything, trying to nail this guy.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm going to defend the dudes, because how the hell are you going to ask me to stay awake and watch you sleep in a dark room not doing anything? So, I mean, there was a full recipe of reasons why the boyfriend kind of got caught slipping on that
reasons
one.
Why Yardley's single for $500, Alex. I'm just
oh, my God. Hey, I mean, come on. And listen, I actually think that the Nintendo was out at that time. He could have played video games and stayed up. I mean, they just totally were not prepared. But
too bad they didn't have any Monster, right? Any Monster drinks or some Red Bull or I don't know.
I mean, he's Johnny Depp. I'm sure he had access to some kind of drug. Come
exactly.
What a bum. Now, when Elm Street, just as a concept, like, how do we feel about potentially fatal nightmares as a story plot? I think that that's a pretty cool thing to kind of, to wrap a story around. I mean, we all know, especially as we get older, and Moni, I know that, since you have young children, the one thing that you can probably appreciate, which I know that Christy appreciates, is sleep. When you're younger, you run from sleep. You know what I mean? And when you get older, like, sleep, is the thing that you're trying to run to. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
So I know that if I don't get enough sleep, I'm not going to necessarily say that I get grumpy or anything. It's just that I can totally tell that I'm not as effective as I should be. So how would this, as far as both of you would go, I mean, how would you hold up under those circumstances of knowing that there's something after you that's triggered by, you having to go to sleep? I mean, that would totally suck.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, even if you don't like sleep as much as I do, you kind of have to have it. It's like imperative. It's one of those good choice of ideas, because everybody has to sleep. Everybody. There is nobody out there, except for a few strange, people who were born that way.
I mean, there was that one guy in that one movie that we watched that was terrible that could stay up for months. Come on now.
Oh, right. You know what? As he was talking, I thought of that movie too. I was like,
totally stole this concept, yeah.
But I mean, you have to sleep, so this affects everybody. This is something that it's a great idea because everybody, I have to sleep. I want to watch this, and trying to stay awake, and then while you're asleep, trying to stay alive I think it's pretty freaking brilliant, especially back then when everybody was just doing slashings. It was just with a knife, walking around killing people. And so Wes Craven definitely took it up a notch, and I liked that for sure.
Yeah,
okay.
there are movies that I watch, or even TV shows, where Moni goes into the third person and wonders at what point she would die.
Yeah.
And Moni would be one of the first to die in this one because my husband always makes fun of me because he says I have narcolepsy. It's like basically as soon as I sit down somewhere, I'm asleep. And, I try to be like, hey, dude, like I'm functioning, like I'm running around all the time when I'm awake. So give me a break, but whatever. So I'm falling asleep constantly. And at this point with this movie, I think if I knew there was a killer, I would try to stay awake for a little while. And then I'd be like, if this is my time to go, then this is my time to go, because sleep is my only friend, and I'm just going to walk into it with open arms.
I mean, no doubt about that. Just the thought of
doing what she loved.
Exactly. And the thought of dying in your dream, making you die in real life, I think that's kind of cool. And I kind of think that's a phobia that a lot of people have. I think everybody's had the dream of you falling and then you wake up before you hit the ground or whatever.
I actually had a dream that I fully hit the ground and died. And that fucked me up for like 2 weeks because I was like,
wow.
You're not supposed to die in dreams, I don't think. Like, you're not supposed to actually see yourself die, the end. And I was so sure that I was going to die for those two full weeks of my life.
Well, apparently me and Christy pull ourselves out of that shit before.
See, you're smart. You're not like Wile E. Coyote and just hit the ground.
I just never, no. All right, y'all. Well, let's talk about Freddy Krueger as a horror villain. Like, where would you rank him? Like, what are your top 3 horror villains? And is Freddy even in your top 3? I mean, for me, I actually put Freddy Krueger pretty high up there. I mean, he's like the perfect mixture of scary and asshole and kind of funny. You know what I mean? That I definitely like in a villain. So I would probably put Freddy, Jason Voorhees, and believe it or not, I'm going to put the Xenomorph from the Aliens series up there, and like as far as my favorites. But well, what about you, Moni?
Yeah, I'm down with the Xenomorph. That could work for sure. I'm more of a Michael Myers kind of gal. That's whole silent but deadly thing got me going. And I don't know about top 3 for Freddy. I don't know. He's not very physically imposing. I mean, if you saw him out of your dreams, well, for instance, as we saw at the end of the film, where she sets up a few basic, like, little traps around her house, and he's, getting his ass kicked all over the place. And it was interesting, especially back then, to pick a horror villain that was physically a smaller person, because minus the fact that he could do anything you wanted when you're in Dreamland, he was, you could kick his ass. Like, you see him on the street, you could kick that little dude's ass, like, for sure. So I don't know. So, and he's a little bit 80s, and definitely now this part I don't know. They kind of made it part of his character. The sound effects have to go.
You're talking about with the tongue.
Like every time, tongue out, it's like.
I love the ray gun tongue, Moni. What are you talking about? I actually had that in my notes to mention the ray gun tongue, and because he did the ray gun tongue one time with her, and then the tongue when it came out of the phone.
Yes.
Which was amazing. Come on.
Like, the tongue coming out of the phone is amazing, but the sound effects really, like, I'm just waiting for him to start running and to go whoop, 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 whoop. Like, I don't know. When they update it, some of that stuff has to go, for sure.
But some of the stuff that Freddy does compensate for his lack in size and intimidation. I mean, he's the bathtub scene. I mean,
I love that scene. That's one of my
drowning in the
favorites.
bathtub. That's awesome. But okay, what about what's up, Christy?
Who are my favorite? Who are my scariest villains? Is that the question?
Yeah, does Freddy Krueger rank kind of high on your horror, the villain thing? And I know I threw the Xenomorph in there now, but I do have a soft spot for those Chucky movies. They're so they're so just, I don't know. I mean, the right mixture of funny and just, I mean, doesn't take itself seriously.
Leprechaun is pretty scary. When I was a kid, anyway. I don't know why he scared the shit out of me. It's because he seemed nice, like he could be nice.
Yeah.
And then he would just like go and tear your ass apart. Like, I don't know. Yeah. That was freaky.
You go up to him expecting some money, and he ends up killing you, and you're like,
yes.
Oh.
Wait, the leprechaun with the messed up crazy face, like, thought that he could be nice.
Well, like okay, I remember this one scene. See, speaking is hard. Keeping in mind that I was young and impressionable at the time that I first started watching those movies, he was hanging out with this really pretty young lady who was about my age, with her dad. And he put some kind of spell on the woman that had never seen him before, that if she sneezed 3 times, she would become his wife. And the dad, was somehow indebted to the leprechaun. So he was supposed to do everything the leprechaun told him to. But then when he realized this was his daughter, he was like, I can't let this happen. And so the leprechaun's all excited. He's like, that woman's going to be my wife. And the guy was like, wait, that's my daughter. And so then the woman sneezes 3 times. And the guy, and if someone doesn't bless her, then she becomes the leprechaun's wife for life. And so, of course, the father goes, bless you, my love, and starts running. And then the leprechaun takes off and, like, tortures him and, like, rips him apart. Like, I don't know. There's something just about how he's all, like, happy-go-lucky. Oh, this hot chick is going to be my wife. We're going to have a hell of a wedding night. And then he just, like, rips your ass a new one. Like, I don't know. That scared the shit out of me. The thought about being his wife forever. The thought about him being nice before. I don't know. I digress.
I think one of the things that they did that made Freddy such an unlikable person, and I think in real life or anything that you do in TV or movies, you can always make somebody hate someone else when they've killed children. So we find out, we totally find out in this movie, Freddy, according to Nancy's mother, he killed 20 kids, and then some people from the town, what would you call it, premeditated murder. They went and killed him. And, I know people say it's justified and all of this stuff, but still they broke the law and they killed this guy. And I think one of the points of that is kind of like Game of Thrones, when you find characters that you may like, but then when you look at their resume, they've done the exact same shit as the characters that you don't like, but you don't want to admit that because you like those characters. So we realize that Nancy's mom is a murderer with some other people in the town.
I got a beef with Nancy's mom because I remember watching this and I never noticed anything, of course, because I was young. I was probably 10 years old. But watching it at my age as a mom now, and I'm looking at Nancy's mom walk around in like these negligées and like orange face, like she had been tanning like crazy. And looking like she's strung out. I mean, talking like she's strung out. She's just like, no, I don't know. And I was going, really? Is that how 80s moms were? I don't think so.
So I have 2 schools of thought on Nancy's mom. And I was thinking either she was someone who was always kind of an absentee parent and was always kind of never there for her daughter and drinking and maybe taking some mommy's little helpers and kind of doing the tanning and kind of just all about herself, and then heard about this Fred Krueger guy in town and decided to take her kind of maybe deep-seated guilt about being a shitty mom and go and kill this guy and take away the perceived threat and kind of feel self-righteous and be like, I've been a good mom this one time. I made sure that this guy couldn't get my kid.
Yeah, I've committed murder.
Exactly. I've committed murder. Therefore, I am a good parent, which is fucked up. But anyways, or maybe she was a good mom before the whole Fred Krueger thing, and she then went out and killed, along with other people in the town, kind of got caught up in that mob mentality, killed this perceived threat to the town's children, and now is living with the guilt, and that's what causes her to be kind of the person we see now with the drinking and the being out of it all the time. I mean, maybe she's kind of checked out because she's living with this guilt. I don't know. It's food for thought, though.
What do you think,
How
Yardley?
did she keep or get Freddy's glove if they had burned him up in the house though?
That's a good question.
I just didn't make any sense.
Because 80s and suspending disbelief.
Yeah, I guess so. She was like, "Yeah, we went in and we poured the gas around the house and we made a trail away, but hey, I got the glove." And I'm like, "What the hell? Like, how did that get out?"
Glove at some point before, and that was their quote unquote evidence that this stuff was true about Freddy. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, probably the 20 dead kids was probably all the evidence that they needed. But
lies are piling up.
Well, let's talk about, I mean, we'll just go highlights and, if you have any lowlights, I definitely want to hear those as well. But as far as your favorite scenes in the movie, the things that have always stuck out to me with this movie is always the imagery of, the narrow corridor and Freddy's long arms reaching out with his knife fingers, so to speak, scraping and the sparks coming off the wall. I always think about that when I think about Nightmare on Elm Street. But for me, my favorite scenes are definitely, we talked about the bathtub scene. I thought that was great. I also like the scene early in the movie with Nancy's best friend, Tina, when she was going up the wall and all the blood was coming out, and her boyfriend, who was falsely accused, standing there in terror. I thought that was a pretty cool thing, especially the way the body kind of hits the floor, and I was like, wow, they really pulled that off. And I thought that was a pretty good effect, especially going back to what I think this was 1984 when this came out.
Yeah.
So
good job with it for sure.
Yeah, I thought that was well done.
I always, every time for the last 30 years when I think about this movie, there's always one scene that always pops into my head anytime somebody talks about Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's Johnny Depp's character's death, where he falls into the bed and then the blood starts.
The fountain.
When I was a kid, that really fucked with me. It really stayed with me. So every time somebody would mention that movie, that's the first thing I would think of. Not Freddy Krueger's crazy nails, none of the other things, but him falling in that bed. I mean, what a way to go out, man.
And then now as an adult, that scene still had that impact, because that was the one that I was going to mention too. But as an adult, the fact that his girlfriend, Nancy, is across the street, knowing that he's about to be killed and like trying to get out of the house to go save him, like that, in some ways, the psychological aspect of like someone you love being in that kind of danger and you can't do anything about it. That's almost scarier today for me. I
mean, it's Johnny Depp. Yeah, I'd be probably, back then, now he looks like a scary rodeo clown, but back then he was hot. And so I'd be distressed too.
Yeah, we just want to save him because he's hot. That's basically the moral of that story.
Oh my gosh. And he likes hamburgers too, so I guess that's totally a plus. Well, and as I was mentioning, the bathtub scene and the Christy definitely highlighted. That was one of the most, I guess you would say, if you were the character of Nancy, his parents, of seeing, what was it, his mom, right, who saw the blood coming up out of the bed. Yeah. And what made that so awesome was just the fact that, his dad was being such a douchebag to Nancy on the phone, and, the parents weren't, taking the children seriously. But you're right, that's definitely an iconic scene. So they had a few doozies and practical effects. There's a scene where Nancy looks back and she sees Tina, and then the giant centipede or whatever comes out of her mouth, and then she kind of melts into a pile of whatever that is, those snakes or whatever in that goo. That was I thought that was great. It just looked so nasty. So for me, just thinking about where we are today with effects, but looking back on that, I just thought that like a lot of those practical things were they were very effective. Did you guys love or hate the practical effects in this movie?
Freddy coming out of the ceiling when Nancy is sleeping, where he doesn't come all the way out, but his face pushes down. That's still an awesome poster moment, but it's not an effect. But why does what did you say the best friend's name is? The lady the girl that gets killed early on in the film?
It was Tina.
Tina. Why does she have to run like a spaz? Like, I know it's the 80s, but you're gonna like flap your arms around while you're running away from a killer. I don't know. Like, you don't have to be an athlete to like run for your life in a more coherent way. I don't know.
More human way.
Yeah.
I think the effects in that movie are pretty, not groundbreaking for the time, but they did a really good job with what they had at the time. I mean, there wasn't a lot of ways to do effects back then except for just jelly and goo and horror, and then add some cheesy things that really suck later to try to, jazz it up a little bit. But they didn't have the effects that they have now. And so I think they did a really good job with it. When I actually looked up the movie just to see on IMDb, and I read some of the reviews, and everybody on there, that was one of the first things they would say is, for this time, the movie's effects were pretty good. I mean, some of them are cheesy, but for what it was back then, they did a pretty good job, creating things that can be really scary visually.
Yeah, they could have held back some of the sound effects, as I mentioned earlier, but the visuals are good.
I have a gripe, because this is one thing in the 80s that really makes me crazy. And maybe if I think about it, it might have gone, forward. But why in every 80s, many 80s movies, especially scary ones, are the dads the biggest dicks? I mean, seriously, everybody's dads are assholes. The cop dad, the Johnny Depp's, all of them. And I'm just... that kind of gives, and now I'm a parent, I'm like, we're not that bad, are we? I mean, Jesus, I just think about that, and it's like the mom's on drugs and walking around and, negligées, and then the dads are just total raging dicks.
That was such a sad scene when Nancy's like crying, and she's like, Daddy, you'll be here in 20 minutes when I bring this guy out, right? And he's like, yeah, just, go to sleep. And she's just like, yeah, you'll be here, though. Okay, I'm going to bring him out. I'm like, he's not going to be there in any way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Fuck. I mean, my kid, when she was little, she, woke up crying one night, and we all ran upstairs, what's wrong? And she said she saw red eyes in the closet. And at first we were kind of like, okay. But then I'm like, you know what? She sees red eyes in the closet, whether that's really happening or not. She sees them. She sees them. And so, we treated it like she saw red eyes in the closet and, handled it that way. I wouldn't be like, whatever, dumbass, just go to sleep, I mean, I know parents do that. My parents did that. And I literally did see shit at night. And so it was like, my parents were like, whatever, go to sleep. And so now I think, God, I mean, we're all parents like that? Jesus, I mean, that's sad to see that, these people are dying all around her, and she's trying to tell them what's happening, and they're all like, and they know because they killed the dude, and these people are dying, and they're still telling her to go to sleep.
I feel like after the point where they had her in the hospital, and she brings out, I don't know, a hat that says Fred Krueger.
Yes, and throws it at him, like tosses it at him.
They're watching her, and she comes out and has the scratches on her arm and stuff. Like, they saw her. She didn't do that to herself. Clearly something strange is going on, and yes, you want her to get some sleep, but maybe at least you stay with her or have someone stay with her to observe her sleep. Don't just lock her in a house and be like, okay, go to sleep, you little brat. Like,
seriously.
Oh my God.
They're like, okay, I'll go to sleep, and then they close the door and they're like, our work here is done. And I'm like, what? No.
Yeah. We're good parents. Let's go get drunk. Cool.
Yeah.
There are definitely some things you cannot reconcile. Now, let's talk about Heather Langenkamp, who plays Nancy, and Nancy's journey throughout this movie. She's definitely one of the most hardcore, strongest female characters that I can remember in movies.
Yeah.
I was reminded watching this movie that it was the case, and I bet, like, I could totally see this young lady after these scenes, like, totally sweating and being freaked out, because it seems like her lungs were probably sore at the end of every day from, like, just frantically screaming. Yeah, just being totally like I would be if Freddy Krueger was after me. But she really put a lot into it. And even though she's mostly known for this movie, Heather has gone on and done other projects, but she didn't necessarily, was a person who really popped in pop culture, after that. But
right.
Nancy's one of my favorite characters. I thought that they did a great job with showing her PTSD, but I am with y'all. It was really aggravating that as freaked out as this young lady was, that, the adults weren't really taking her seriously. But how can you really explain that and make it believable? So that's one of the reasons why I give the parents, or the adults a little slack. I mean, you can't really, I personally wouldn't have believed her either. You know what I'm saying? But
well, Daddy had work to do on that murder scene when she was asking him to be there for her in 20 minutes. I get that, but maybe you send a guy or you get her fucking mother to go, watch her. I don't know. I just feel like you put an adult on a kid that's had that much going on. Exactly. That was just my point, is even if you don't believe it, your kid's clearly at least going through a medical issue that might need addressing.
Your child's lost her three closest friends somehow, whether you believe what has happened or not. And she's like, I'm sorry, I've got to go tan and put on a negligee. You do you, honey. Bye-bye.
And drink on the porch.
Exactly.
It's done. Yeah, that was my thing. And, at the end, the last scene, and of course it's supposed to be maddening and it builds that suspense, but where she's breaking out all the goddamn windows trying to get someone to come help her. Even if you don't believe that there's a killer in the house, somebody's been killing other kids, A, so it's plausible that there's a killer in the house. And B, they're like, maybe I should go tell, her dad. And it's that's a police protect and serve issue. No matter whose child she is, there is a kid screaming for help and breaking out all the fucking windows in her house.
Yeah.
You see that, you get the police. Neighbors would have called the police had they seen that.
Yeah.
So it just is hello, some grown up just intervene in some way and make sure this child doesn't cut herself breaking out all the windows. I don't know.
I totally agree with you. And then I have a quick question, because do you think that Heather got typecast from this movie because she was in a few of them? And do you think that she didn't move on to do other things because she just wasn't that high quality of an actress? Or do you think she got kind of typecast into this role and didn't move on to anything else because that's literally how everybody knows her?
I was wondering, because she's been in 34 other projects. I was kind of looking her up.
They're all kind of low budget, not a lot.
Yeah, she's done a lot of stuff, but you're right. Nobody's really watched her in things. I don't know how to say that better right now.
I'm trying to figure out who this model character is that she played in Star Trek Into Darkness. I'm gonna actually have to Google that, but apparently there's a film that just completed, Hellraiser Judgment, and it's actually direct to video, but apparently she makes some type of a cameo in that movie. But I'm with you. I mean, it shows that she has a credit in American Horror Story. Let's see, what else is she
a background. I mean, a very small. And then there was a big movie she was in, and then it says her scenes were cut out. So that was kind of weird.
Oh, she was in Growing Pains, the TV series.
Yeah.
I don't remember that, but yeah, I mean, I probably would say that she's maybe has been typecast, because if I saw her in any other project and she wasn't the young lady that I saw in Nightmare, I wouldn't have known who the hell she was.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. And if I saw her in another movie, I'd be like, it's Nancy.
That's true too.
Yeah.
You just automatically see her as that character. So I just think sometimes people that are actually casting are like, we don't want that. We don't want somebody looking at her in their movie and talking or thinking about another movie. So I just wondered if that's what happened to her.
I don't know. Jamie Lee Curtis made it work. And I mean, I'm sorry, whether you think her acting is talented or not, as far as when you think about physicality of how many beautiful, ridiculously beautiful actresses you could hire, Nancy's got a more plain every girl look, which I think works for a lot of things, and so does Jamie Lee Curtis. I don't know why Jamie Lee made it maybe and Heather did not. I don't know.
I guess it's all in the luck of the draw or the agent. I'm not sure. I love Jamie Lee Curtis, so I'm happy she moved forward, but maybe Nancy was strong in this. Heather as Nancy was strong in this role, but when she went on to do other things, she just wasn't that great. Maybe they were just kind of like, she's really good at this one thing, and then that's kind of it. I don't know, but it's curious.
For the 80s, she's got this kind of Brooke Shields with the eyebrows and the hair thing going. I don't know.
I think she's pretty. I thought she was pretty in the movie.
Those big lips and everything, yeah.
So, I don't know. It'll always be a mystery. Maybe we can call her up and ask her.
And curiouser.
But she's still working. And looking at the IMDb, picture her glamour shot there. I mean, she's in her 50s. She still looks great. Yeah. And I think that, maybe I might kind of do some digging and kind of watch some other things that she's been in. Maybe that'll be a fun little project for me to possibly a treat for myself when we go on hiatus for the holidays, because I'm kind of curious about that. You kind of piqued my interest in what she's been doing, Christy. But let's talk about how the movie closes out. It was actually pretty awesome, because I think for the average person, there's a split second where you think, whatever, it was a dream. But her mom was acting even more weird or weirder, or she was just more, you know what I mean? Like, what was that movie about the suburban where the women were the robots or whatever? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Stepford Wives. Yes.
Yeah, like it kind of had that vibe, and you had this fog coming through. But I thought it was cool that you were like, oh man, this young lady, she made it through it. And then she basically gets in the Freddy Krueger decked out convertible and they drive off, which was pretty interesting. So do y'all think that sequence, she was still dreaming though? Like, I don't really, it didn't give me a feeling that she was up and was tricked. Do you think that all of that was, I don't know, like what?
They put that I think they call it a scrim, or like that, what we would call an Instagram, filter on that last scene. So I'm assuming that was supposed to be our 80s cue that they were dreaming. Yeah. I don't know, that she was dreaming, because it kind of had that like fuzzy quality to it.
And they mentioned the fog.
Her mom would have watched her like get taken off in a convertible like that and be like, cool, see you later. Like,
and they're just waving, bye.
Well, remember, Glenn, her boyfriend, mentioned, hey, where'd this fog come from, or something like that. He made like a comment like that. Okay, so I'm just making the assumption that that she's still in it, because I guess you really, if you're Freddy, like, you just can't go out getting your ass whipped like that, you know what I mean? And the hilarity of Marge Thompson getting snatched through that door was just
Well, and my husband and I were saying that actually because at one point Nancy breaks that glass and is yelling at the cops to help her. Had that glass been big enough for her to fit through and get the fuck out of that house, she would have done that at that point. And so the fact that, yes, that she gets torn through it, that part, I was like, that has to be a dream, because there's no way that her body would have fit through that if her daughter's body couldn't fit through that, like, just one scene ago. So,
yeah. And there were bars on it, too.
Were there bars? I know there were bars on the bigger windows. Were there bars on that little one? Okay.
Mm-hmm. I can't remember.
I think so, because remember she had to poke. Remember she was like having to poke it up. Well, you know what? My brain's going to hurt trying to think about that. But I totally believe that there were bars over that little thing too, though. But
okay, I know there were on the big ones, and that's why she couldn't go. But I thought for some reason that the little one was just too little, because it was that was not a human-sized window. But anyways, that still didn't seem like a human-sized window. I'm standing by my mistake. So there, I'm wrong, and I'm still going to be louder about it. That makes me right. God damn it, America. Sorry.
Okay. Whatever you say, honey. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree. I think there were bars over that little window too. But I can't be for sure. And
maybe I watched an updated version where there weren't. Y'all know.
Ooh. Maybe there's maybe there's a couple of dimensions of this movie, and we just all have watched a different one. Did you ever think about that? Yeah.
Yes, that's my excuse. Will always be my excuse now for whenever I might be wrong.
You're like, John Teeter must have come through another dimension and changed everything.
Exactly. Yes.
No doubt about that. And now, I guess, I mean, all in all, I mean, are there any closing thoughts on the movie? I mean, would you give it a passing grade? I definitely would, because watching it again just brought back memories for me of, the mid 80s. I thought that it was great. You know, it's the type of horror movie that I like. I mean, but granted, my favorite horror movie is Return of the Living Dead because I kind of like comedy.
Yeah.
You know, in my horror movies.
Yeah.
But I thought that this was solid. I mean, you actually had a character taking her own fate in her own hands, figuring out what's going on, proactive in her own survival. I'm always going to root for characters that are like that. I think overall, like this is a movie that if I was drinking, I would love it even more because it's just there's just so much, you know, like the stuff in it isn't super. Well, Freddie's stuff is over the top, but the things that she was doing weren't necessarily over the top. They were things that would be manageable for any of us to probably do. But I thought that the character was smart. I thought that Freddie, was Freddie, a very enjoyable villain who, will pull some nice tricks, out of his bag. He's definitely solidified himself as a pop culture icon. Yeah. Here's the one thing I can't remember the next two Nightmare on Elm Streets, but I have a feeling that I didn't like them.
Yeah.
So
it was just, it was regurgitated shit from the first. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't anything different. There really wasn't a lot of, Nancy was in it, she reprises her role and, but it's just the same stuff. I mean, you can only do what you can do with a certain story, and
that's all of those. It's like you have Friday the 13th, you have the Halloween series. It's like they all start with most of them start with a really good story, which this one absolutely has.
Yeah.
And then they make money, and the studios want more, and the fans want more, and then they regurgitate and just go like, how many different ways can we kill and show that the bad guy can get killed, but then not be killed? And I don't know. That's pretty much all you have left is fun ways to be killed. That's pretty much it.
Right. I mean, I would say for the first movie, nostalgia is if I was going to watch a slasher movie from the 80s, this would be my first choice for sure. Guys know I'm not on the biggest train of slasher movies. That's more of Moni's thing, but I do enjoy it. I enjoyed the movie. I liked the girl power. She was kicking ass, and liked that part of it. I think Freddy Krueger's character, I never really answered if he would be in my top 5, but I mean, he would be up there. I'm more of like Hellraiser and Phantasm, like the Tall Man and those guys scared me more than Freddy Krueger scares me. But the concept, the dream, dying in your dream concept, Wes Craven was, I would say, pretty groundbreaking with his horror movie concepts. I mean, then after 10 years later, you had Scream, and it was another slasher movie, but wow, I mean, anybody who sees that mask, the Scream mask, knows exactly where that came from. So I'd say that Nightmare on Elm Street is definitely should go down as an ultimate horror classic, and Freddy Krueger is, as cheesy as he is, he's definitely would be, I mean, I'd say I'd give this movie a 3.8 out of 5 stars for sure. I thought, I'd watch it again.
So
awesome.
My question to you guys, though, would you be excited to have a remake if it was well done, or do you think this movie should rest on its laurels and be the Nightmare on Elm Street? I don't mean the shitty one. Forget that one. Should this one be the Nightmare on Elm Street that we all remember and harken back to?
It depends on who gets their hands behind the wheel. I mean, I think it could totally be pulled off, but it totally depends on whose hands are on the wheel. I think reaching back into the past and kind of modernizing but keeping something relevant is something that was definitely proven in the box office with the It movie. So I think if you have the right people with their hands on the wheel, I think that it's definitely possible to pull it off.
Yeah, I would be really excited to see a good version, updated version of this, because with all our technology and everything that we have nowadays, I mean, phones, computers, just an updated version of what, teenagers' lives are like now, I think you could really do a lot with this movie. So I would totally be stoked to see a new one if they could actually do it the right way, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Movie Pass, I'll definitely watch it.
Yeah, I think it would be good, and I think the one that they remade really suffered from a lack of joy. I don't know how to even say that. It just sort of plodded along and went through the murder motions, but didn't really do any of the stuff that was kind of fun or funny or tongue-in-cheek about this, about the original.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, the original made me laugh at times when I wasn't supposed to, like when Freddie was getting felled by all of the household items, the little traps that she had set up. But, I think also I'm watching this now, having seen Home Alone, and that absolutely reminded me of Home Alone, is where the bungling burglars are in not their own environment. Because, in the dream world, he's king, right? But he comes into the physical world, and now he's tripping on chairs and getting things, slammed into his face, and made me laugh. And that wasn't the intention, for sure. But if they could update it in a way that made fun of itself at the right times, but also made it terrifying when it counted, I think that would be good. And I didn't get a chance to say, I think I would give this one a 4. But yeah, they absolutely would have to take out the sound effects and the spastic running and a few of those kind of things
and
for me to rank that a little higher.
The mommy on pills with negligées. I hope they would take that out too.
Yeah,
please don't make us parents look that bad. Jesus.
Honestly, if they put a line in the movie even where Nancy kind of is washing, she confronts her mom a few times, and she kind of confronted her about you used to be such a great mom, and then this happened, so that we could see that it's guilt that made her mom go this way. Just kind of get a little bit of as to why she's such a absentee space cadet. I don't know.
Exactly.
I wanted to bring up, are we good on talking about this one, Mr. Yardley?
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to bring up, we're going to be on hiatus for the next 2 weeks, and we decided our date of next recording will be, that people will be able to listen to, is January 9th.
Yes.
That will be the next one that drops. Okay,
yep.
So Tuesday the 9th is the next time that you guys will hear from us. We're just going to take a little holiday break, but I wanted to, in case you're missing out on creepiness, there are a handful of holiday movies that we recommend, and I'd like to go through mine real quickly. Just also as a side note, the It movie that, of course, we did our You'll Float 2 episode on is actually scheduled for digital release this coming Tuesday, the 19th, and will be on DVD for those of you that still like to buy the physical item on January 9th, which is the date that we'll be back. So you'll have time to check that out. I just watched Black Christmas again. It's a 1974 film, but it's super creepy, and it's got the whole female heroine thing going on, and it's got a lot of girl power. It's a sorority house where they're getting picked off, but they still got the plucky heroine. So that's something that you can actually catch on YouTube if you can't find it anywhere else. Krampus is the 2015 version, has Adam Scott and Toni Collette, and it's got some funny moments, and it also goes into the real mythology of the Krampus.
I thought I was surprisingly happy with that movie.
It was
good. It had some funny, cheesy stuff, moments, because the character is kind of ridiculous looking, but he's scary at times and kind of funny, cheeky at times, and I love Toni Collette. She can do no wrong in my mind, so I was like, oh, please, God, let this be a good movie, And it was good.
Well, Adam Scott was perfect as kind of the, sarcastic guy, that, perfectly cast as someone who would be not believing in the spirit of Christmas and be the perfect victim for somebody like Krampus to come along. So,
right.
And then I don't think it's a Christmas movie, but The Thing, because it takes place in Antarctica, so it has that whole vibe to it with all the snow and the isolation. Of course, the 1982 version, and then the 2011 remake, Christy and I were deciding holds up pretty well, so that's something you might want to check out. And then, Christy, I think you have some to recommend as well.
Well, we kind of just discussed this right before the show, and 2 immediately popped into my head, and one of them would be Frozen and not the Elsa, Disney version.
I don't know, that's pretty scary when you're a mom of young kids and you've watched that a million times. But
I have never seen that movie, and I just don't care to. So
it's good, but oh my God.
Frozen is 2010, and I remember it was 2010, around that area is when there was a lot of indie horror movies that were starting to come out. It was like the floodgates kind of opened, and I remember this one being talked about, and I was super stoked about it. And so when it came out, I watched it, and it is a pretty darn solid movie, thriller, you could definitely call it a horror movie, about 3 kids, I would say like college age, going to ski, and it was supposed to be a guy's weekend, and then one of the girlfriends tags along, so there's kind of like this weird, awkward, situation with that, and excuse me, they hop on the skis, what do you call that? The ski lift, thank you. And all of a sudden bad weather comes in, and they don't know that those kids are on the ski lift, and they shut down the ski lodge. So they're trapped, however, I don't know, 40 feet in the air, I'm assuming, with a snowstorm moving in, and them just trying to figure out how to save themselves, not freeze to death, and also dealing with all their drama, the 3 of them sitting on the ski lift. So I would say, it's an indie. It's not, it didn't go to, I don't think it went to, it was released at theaters, but I was pleasantly surprised. And actually, it got a 6.2 rating on IMDb, which for a horror movie is pretty solid. So I'd recommend it if you've never seen it. It's definitely something at the end of it, you're going to be like, what the fuck? So, nice. And then just one more. I actually had to look it up because I couldn't remember the name of it. But A Christmas Horror Story. And I was surprisingly tickled and enjoyed this one. And it's a collaboration of small stories in one movie. And it's got some pretty solid stories in it. It's pretty funny. So it's funny. It's scary. It fits the bill for sure. And that one was back in 2015 as well. So I would definitely check that one out. And hey, it's got William Shatner in it. So, hello. Nice. How can you deny a William Shatner?
Oh my gosh. I can always deny TJ Hooker. Anyway, thanks for letting me know that the It movie comes out digitally Tuesday. Usually I like to go out and get the Blu-ray because you usually get an HD version and all that other stuff. But man, I'm kind of thirsty. I might get it on digital and not.
I want to catch it for sure sooner than later.
Well, it's definitely been a pleasure talking to everyone, and I can't wait to get back after the holidays. We want to make sure that we wish all of our listeners, a happy holidays. I hope you have a good time and, don't have any drama and, make it back to the real world safely after New Year's. But from my party to yours, I hope we all bring in 2018 on a positive note.
Hell yeah, be safe, have fun, creep it real. We'll see/hear from you after the new year, everybody.
See you later, guys.
Wasn't just another day. The silent signs were pulling me away, and everything might not be what it seems, 'cause the nightmares keep calling me. I knew this wasn't the right way to go. I care less what to learn than what I know, and I can only see this in my dreams, 'cause the nightmares keep calling me. I think I lost my way. They say that I'm an addict.